Last week, we highlighted an important but often overlooked crisis that's unfolding at the U.S. southern border. According to an investigation published in the Free Press, the grim realities faced by Border Patrol agents are leading to a troubling increase in suicides. These agents frequently encounter horrific scenes, including the discovery of dead bodies and numerous reports of sexual assault by migrants making the dangerous trek north. Moreover, a new report indicates that the U.S. Border Patrol is facing unprecedented turnover within its ranks, with nearly 25% of its agents leaving the force since President Biden took office. Now, to delve deeper into this issue and its impact on law enforcement, we're joined by the Vice President of the National Border Patrol Council, Chris Cabrera. Chris, thank you very much for taking the time and joining us here on the PDB Situation Report.
Not a problem. I appreciate you guys having me.
Now, let me preface what I'm about to ask by saying, in the U.S., it appears that Americans, and certainly much of the media, have attention deficit disorder, right? Very short attention spans. They can't seem to focus on more than one issue. And for a while, the problems at the U.S. southern border were front and center. Right? It actually seemed to impact the White House. The White House actually seemed, although I suspect that they were pretending, but they seemed to care. And they acted as if they were going to take action finally and try to do something to properly secure the border. Now, we're hard-pressed to find stories, articles, coverage of what's happening at the U.S. southern border. Everyone's talking about the Trump trial in New York, or obviously they're focused on what's happening overseas, whether it's in Gaza or whether it's in Ukraine. Can you give us, at the outset, your assessment of where we are right now with the U.S. southern border?
Well, right now, I think it's probably the most porous that I've seen it in almost 23 years. It's gotten really bad. Years ago, the focus sector was just the Rio Grande Valley, and most of the people were coming just in that area. And here recently, it's spread out throughout the entire Southwest United States. San Diego and Tucson are taking the brunt of it. Also, you have a big issue in El Paso and Eagle Pass, and even the northern border, they're starting to see it. So I think the word is out that it's easy to get in now, and so people are going to take advantage of it. I mean, I think it's akin to if Bank of America said they were giving out $500 to everybody that comes on a certain day. Of course, you'd have a line around the block. And that's what we're seeing now, whether it's true or not, whether all these benefits are given out or not. That's what the word is. So, I mean, we're getting hit not just from South and Central American countries. We're getting hit from all over the world, from China, from India, from Bangladesh, from Romania. I mean, you name it, we're seeing it down here.
Yeah, talk to me about that a little bit, about the influx of Chinese migrants. Where primarily are they hitting at the border, and what do you make of that increase?
Well, primarily it's in the San Diego area, but we do see them sprinkled in Arizona and in Texas. We see quite a bit. It's odd because China is not one of those countries where you can just say, hey, I'm going to leave for a little bit, go on a vacation, and I'll be back. It's not like most countries where you can come and go as you want. So that's kind of concerning. You have a lot of people talk about military age males. I don't know how accurate that would be, because most people that come over are military age males, just for the fact that those are the ones that come to work. So it could be one thing, it could be another, or it could be a sprinkling of both.
Mm-hmm. What about the White House? Recently, anyway, they have, when they talk about the border, which isn't often at this point, they point to a dip in numbers, right? There's been a decrease in numbers coming across the border. What do you make of that?
I was thinking about that just yesterday. A good friend of mine told me years ago that, there's a dip in the numbers, but better than bad is not necessarily good. If you look at the numbers, we're around, 130,000 a month under the previous administration, and probably the administration before that, we were looking at 30 to 40,000 a month. 50,000 was a big number. So even if we're at 140 and it's down from 300,000, it's still not a good thing, because we went up and came back down, and we're nowhere near where we should be to even get where we've been in the past.
Okay. And what about What about the manpower numbers? We talked just before our conversation started about the idea that the Border Patrol's lost about 25% of its personnel since President Biden took office. Where is the Border Patrol at this point in terms of manpower, staffing, resources, and what's the impact on the current active duty agents when you talk about that sort of reduction?
You know, the manpower numbers are kind of deceiving. I think we're around almost 20,000, maybe 19,000 nationwide, but we're not putting the brunt of the manpower in the field to prevent people from coming into the country, from drugs coming into the country, from whoever, for whatever it needs to be done. The majority, at least 50%, if not more, start the day off in the station, and as the shift goes on, that number dwindles, and more people end up inside rather than outside where they need to be. They're doing hospital watch duties, they're transporting, they're processing. So obviously processing is a necessary part of the system, but so is having a deterrence out there for people coming in, not just that, for safety for the agents that are out there, and safety for the people that are crossing. I mean, it's a dangerous area. There's a lot of snakes. We see a lot of dehydration. We need to have that manpower out there, but it's just not out there. As far as the attrition, we are losing people faster than we can get them in. This job's not for everybody. You're outside 105 degrees with 50-60% humidity, sometimes higher. You have to want to be out there. You have to want to do that job to even sign on the dotted line. And traditionally, it's been that when you hit your retirement window, which is anywhere from 7 to 10 years, you'd wait towards the end of it and then leave around 50, 57 years old. Now, as soon as guys hit that retirement window, they're gone. I mean, I would say about 60, 70%, 80% are taking off the first chance they get.
Okay, well, this kind of moves us into a related topic, of course, but a very important one, which is how do you assess and I know this is a bit of a soft science, but how do you assess the morale of the personnel there within the Border Patrol?
It's unfortunate, but morale right now is in the toilet. We're not allowed to go out there and do our job. People that we catch, we're turning around and letting them go. What we see out there on a daily basis, a lot of people think that Border Patrol agents just don't want anybody coming into the country. I guess they forget to look at the fact that the majority of the Border Patrol is of Hispanic origin. I think if people saw what we saw with what happens to some of these kids, what happens to these women, what happens to these young boys by the predators, by the Mexican cartel members, what these people have to go through, they would understand that if we stop this altogether, this wouldn't be happening. It's just it's mind-boggling. I guess people want to get their news off TikTok for some reason instead of actually doing some research and seeing what's actually happening down there. And it's not what it's painted in the media. A lot of it doesn't get reported, but we do see some horrible things that no one should have to see.
Do the agents talk about this themselves, amongst themselves? I mean, the increase that we touched on earlier in the show about the number of suicides within the Border Patrol. Is there much discussion, or do you find that the agents kind of keep all of this locked up inside?
I think most agents will keep it locked up inside. However, the Border Patrol has done, they are out there trying to bring more awareness to it. And it's one of those jobs where, unfortunately, it's seen as a weakness instead of a call for help. With all law enforcement, all military, I guess the higher ups look at it as a weakness, or they did. And thankfully, the culture is starting to change where people are allowed to come forward and not face any repercussions for doing it. But some people see it as a shame to do it, and they don't want to come forward. And it's unfortunate that we've lost way too many people these last couple of years. And I don't think you could find anybody in the Border Patrol that doesn't know somebody that has taken their own life in the last few years.
Yeah, I think mental health concerns and the ability to offer assistance, whether you're talking about a difficult position or job like the Border Patrol, or whether you're talking about first responders, we're talking about military, it just seems like we've always been kind of lagging and missing the boat on this. So it's it's very worrisome, and that's why I asked that question about morale, but also the important question of, to what degree does the agency itself understand these problems and in real time addressing them or trying to address them?
Yeah, they're starting to get on board with it. I think where the flaw is with the agency, and this is just my way of thinking, is we have CBP is a very big agency, and it covers many different spectrums. You have the guys at the bridge, you have the guys that fly the helicopters, you have agricultural, you have a lot of office people, and you have Border Patrol, and for the most part, they're completely different jobs. And to fix this, I think you have to attack it at each level, at each lowest level, not one big umbrella that covers everybody, because what applies to the office folks or the guys that are working at the bridge don't necessarily relate to the guys on the ground that are on foot most of the day, as the Border Patrol is. But they are, I will give them credit, they are moving forward. I know the chief of the Border Patrol has done a lot to address this. So we are making strides. It's just unfortunate that you wish it was a magic pill that they could put something into play and it was fixed the next day. But unfortunately, that's not how it works.
Right. No, that's very true. Let's look at it this way. If you're in charge, say you suddenly were in charge, what would be the one thing that you would propose that you believe would make a significant and, in the short term, impact and improvement for the U.S. southern border situation and for the Border Patrol?
I think as far as enforcement-wise, I think it's very simple. It's insanely simple. It's mandatory detention, mandatory removal. 2005 timeframe, we had a lot of people that were coming across, and we didn't have any bed space, so we were releasing everybody out the door. They came out with a program called expedited removal, where the Border Patrol agent was, in a sense, he was the judge as well. So when somebody appealed it, they would talk to the same guy that processed them, and there's no merit to your claim. Turn around, you're going home. And in 2 days, it stopped. I mean, it completely stopped. It went from hundreds and hundreds a day to nothing. And then they came up with this asylum claim, this asylum loophole. And don't get me wrong, there is a place for asylum in this system, but it's being exploited, and the ones that need it aren't getting the attention they need because everybody's claiming it. So it's like the boy who cried wolf. So people aren't paying attention to it. So they need to put this, they need to stop this, close this loophole. If this was a tax loophole, they would have closed it years ago. I mean, but for some reason, there's just no need for, there's no fire under them to do it. And in the meantime, there's thousands of people that are suffering. There's women that are being exploited. There's people that die along the journey that we don't even know about. Not to mention what's coming into this country that we don't know about. Granted, a good majority of the people are coming in looking for a way to make a living and work. They're doing it the incorrect way, but I think they have good intentions. But then there's also those that are getting through that may have bad intentions, and then you have the criminal element that comes in and they're just going to prey on people. And I think what a lot of folks don't understand that live away from the border is this affects you guys much more than it affects our communities, because they come in, they don't stay here. They go to the rest of the United States. We don't have an opioid problem down where we live. It comes through here, but we don't have that problem here. The MS-13 guys, I've arrested them before, but I've never seen one walking around town. You go to Virginia, Maryland, DC, you'll see them all the time, but you won't see them down here. So it affects people, the rest of the country, more than it affects us. And I think until people realize that, we're still going to be behind the 8 ball on this.
All right. Talk to me about the vetting process, if you could. We don't have much time left, but how thorough is the vetting of individuals that are encountered? Obviously, there's nothing you can do about the known gotaways, but for those that are encountered, what's the vetting process like? How thorough is it?
It's not very thorough at all. I mean, if you come into this country and you don't have an ID, I have to take your word for it that you are who you say you are. I run your fingerprints. If you don't come up with a hit from the United States that you've been arrested before here in this country, I got to take you at your word on who you are. That wouldn't work anywhere else. You try getting into the halls of Congress without an ID, they're not letting you in. But yeah, it's based on everybody telling the truth and everybody having noble intentions, and that's not necessarily the case. So yeah, we're not vetting them at all. I think if people really knew what the vetting process is down here, there would be an outrage over it. But yeah, it's just not there. You know, getting into one other thing is, years ago, under the last administration, and I don't like to play this, you know, this administration, that administration, but this is just for timeline purposes. We were doing DNA tests for families that came with kids, and that was to ensure that this was an actual family with this kid. We wouldn't do it for everyone, but it was pretty widespread, and we put it out there, and we would tell these people, okay, everybody line up with your family. We're going to do a DNA test. If that is not part of your family, and you go through with this test, and we find out you're lying, you're going to jail. And 40% would step out of line. 40%. And now there's no money for that DNA testing. But 40% were coming in with kids that weren't their kids as a fake family. And if you look at, to me, the most vulnerable part of this is the kids. And if you have funding for anything, it's got to be that. Anything at all, you have to do that. But for some reason, there's no money for it.
Yeah. No. Well, Chris, unfortunately, we're out of time. But I hope that you'll agree we could sit back down in a couple of months, revisit this situation, see where we are. Because again, my concern with the border is always that it flares up. The media will pay a little bit of attention to it. The White House less so. But then something else happens, you know, either you domestically or overseas, and we tend to push it off the radar screen. It's too important to do that. So you can't have national security, you can't have public security in the U.S. unless you have a secure border. So I very much appreciate you taking the time. Chris Cabrera of the National Border Patrol Council. Hope to see you again very soon.
All right, thank you for having me. And if you're ever down this way and you want to go for a tour down here, let me know. I'll be happy to show you around.
I will take you up on that, sir. Thank you very much.